Whisperwind Pass hung thick with the ghosts of 1,000 floral breaths, a dizzying tapestry of petrichor, and the heady, sweet musk of decaying sunpetal blossoms. Each inhalation felt like drinking from an ancient, forgotten well, a bitter comfort that settled deep in your lungs, clinging to the alveoli like particularly stubborn spores. You pulled your hood tighter, not against a chill, for the pass held a perpetual, humid warmth, but against the intrusive scents, the very essence of the ecosystem you both revered and resented. Your hands, calloused from countless nights spent sifting through soil samples and coaxing reluctant mycelial networks into view, instinctively brushed against the leather pouch at your hip, its familiar weight a small, private reassurance. Inside, nestled among dried sunpetal fragments and a tiny, almost transparent glass vial of concentrated pollen, was your secret. A handful of perfectly ripe Aqua-Glow Berries, their translucent skins shimmering with an inner light, a vibrant, selfish burst of color against the muted greens and browns of your world. The path beneath your worn boots, usually a clear, well-trodden ribbon of packed earth and scattered sunpetal petals, had become a chaotic jumble of exposed roots. They snaked and writhed like petrified serpents, not just across the ground, but rising from it, forming bizarre, temporary barricades that seemed to defy the very laws of growth. This was the Root-Tangle Maze, and its paths were indeed shifting, trapping vital supply convoys, isolating communities, and more acutely, disrupting the delicate balance of the spore currents you had dedicated your life to understanding. A fresh wave of frustrated, impotent anger simmered just beneath your calm exterior. You watched, hidden behind a particularly ancient, gnarled sunpetal tree whose bark was scarred with glyphs that whispered of forgotten rituals. As a group of Sunpetal Scholars, their academic robes a jarringly pristine white against the earthy tones of the pass, fumbled with a series of intricately carved wooden markers. Their hushed, earnest voices carried on the breeze, a drone of theories and citations, each more detached from the living, breathing reality of the forest than the last. They were historians and researchers, poring over ancient texts and traditions, attempting to interpret the sunpetals while through dusty parchment, rather than the subtle language of its spores and root systems. It affirmed your core goal to build a stronger bond with the ancient plant guardians, a goal that felt increasingly urgent and solitary. They, the scholars, saw patterns in history. You saw the delicate, complex dance of life and death unfolding in real time beneath your very nose. Their approach felt like dissecting a songbird to understand its melody, while you sought to learn the tune by listening to its heart. The latest reports suggest the eastern route is impassable. Elder Lyra, one scholar, a gaunt woman with spectacles perched precariously on her nose, fretted. We've cross-referenced the scroll of verdant whispers, and this level of root tangle shift is unprecedented outside of the Great Convergence. Elder Lyra, a portly man whose robes seemed to struggle against his girth, stroked his neatly trimmed beard. Indeed, Scholar Alara. It speaks to a profound imbalance. Have the ritual offerings been observed? The incantations of Root-Tangle chanted. You snorted softly, a sound barely audible above the rustle of leaves. Rituals and incantations. They would bring more solace to the scholars than to the ancient plant guardians themselves. The guardians didn't need chants. They needed understanding, respect, a listening ear to the subtle vibrations of their health. Your kind of understanding. The spore sleuth's understanding. This entire situation, this academic bluster, only solidified your conviction that you were the one who could truly discern the plant guardian's needs. It reinforced your deeply ingrained flaw, finding it hard to ask for help, preferring to solve problems alone. No one else truly grasped the intricacies of the fungal networks, the subtle shifts in spore density that indicated distress or prosperity. A familiar melodic hum, like a distant, lazy insect, drifted through the air, cutting through the scholar's monotonous chatter. Your head snapped up, a slight, involuntary smile tugging at the corner of your lips. Orion. You recognized the particular cadence of his song chant, a method he used to gather ingredients for his nebulae tea, a unique blend known for its soothing properties and for stimulating the mind's connection to ancient lore. He was an aspiring lore weaver, endlessly fascinated by how stories were truly made and how they flourished, a beautiful, almost naive counterpoint to your own cynical, pragmatic approach. Lost in thought again, little spore, Orion's voice, warm and laced with a gentle teasing, broke your reverie. He emerged from a thicket of luminescent moss, his hands carefully cradling a basket woven from river reeds, overflowing with iridescent leaves and plump, sapphire blue berries. His eyes, the color of a twilight sky, met yours, and for a moment, the weight of the world lifted. You grunted, a noncommittal sound, though your heart had given a telltale flutter. Just observing the futility of human endeavor, Orion. The scholars are convinced a new incantation will untangle those roots. You gestured with a dismissive flick of your wrist towards the bewildered academics. Orion chuckled, a soft, rumbling sound. Perhaps they simply need a different perspective. A new story, if you will, to guide their hands. Though I suspect a cup of my latest nebulae tea blend might offer more immediate clarity. He extended a small, intricately carved wooden cup, steam curling delicately from its brim, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine and something subtly earthy. You took it, the warmth seeping into your cold fingers. The tea was a comfort, a shared ritual between you, a silent acknowledgement of your unique bond as fellow nebulae tea alchemists. You always find a story, even in a tangled root, you murmured, taking a slow, appreciative sip. The bitterness of the tea, combined with a surprising sweetness, spread through your mouth, chasing away some of the day's gnawing cynicism. And you, my spore sleuth, always find the truth beneath the story, Orion countered, his gaze lingering on your face. Tell me, what do the roots whisper to you? They whisper of something being taken, or perhaps something being withheld, you said, your voice softening. The sunpetal networks are agitated, not simply blocked. This isn't just a physical obstruction, It's a systemic disruption. The spores, they're crying out for the cloud blossom nectar. The MacGuffin, the powerful immune system booster, was becoming scarcer. Its absence felt keenly by the entire ecosystem. Its normal flow, carried through ancient root systems and fungal pathways, was now bottlenecked. Orion nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. The nectar, a tale often told of its healing properties, but rarely of its true connection to the plant guardians. The lumina pearl's glow in the reef has been fading, you know. Some say the two are linked. Your eyes narrowed. The lumina pearl, that's a different ecosystem entirely. What does a deep-sea mollusk's luminescence have to do with the sunpetal's immune system? You knew the legends, of course. Rowan's sunstone, the aspiring harmony seeker, had made it their life's mission to restore the pearl's glow, believing it to be a beacon of balance for the entire world. Their goal, while seemingly noble, always felt uncomfortably aggressive to you. A desire to force harmony rather than allow it to unfold organically. Perhaps more than we realize, Orion mused, gazing into the distance, towards the rising peaks shrouded in a perpetual, mist-laden mystery. There are old stories, fragmented tales, that speak of the pearl as a living heart, its pulse echoing through the very bedrock of this land. A dimming heart, a weakened body. Suddenly, the air grew colder, heavy with moisture. A peculiar, unseasonal mist, unlike the usual gentle fogs of the pass, began to roll in, obscuring the upper reaches of the ancient trees. The Skyweaver's lookout is obscured, you muttered, a prickle of unease tracing your spine. This mist felt different, almost artificial, carrying a faint, metallic tang. It was a new player in the ecosystem's symphony of distress. Just then, a figure emerged from the shifting mists, their silhouette tall and resolute. Rowan's sunstone. Their usual vibrant robes, woven with threads of sun-kissed hemp and ocean algae, seemed muted by the encroaching fog, their face grim, determined. Their gaze swept over the Sunpetal Scholars, dismissing them with a flicker of impatience, before settling on you and Orion. The cloud blossom nectar, spore sleuth, Rowan's voice was sharp, cutting through the damp air. Its flow is critical, not just for the sunpetal, but for the lumina pearl. Without its restorative properties, the pearl will extinguish entirely, plunging the reef into darkness, and the world will follow. You felt a familiar spark of irritation. The nectar is for the sunpetal's health, Rowan, for the plant guardians. You risk depleting its reserves, weakening the very core of this land by siphoning it for your deep-sea experiments. Experiments, Rowan scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping their lips. I speak of preservation, of restoring balance. The ancient texts, the very ones these scholars purport to study, detail the nectar's profound connection to the pearl. It is the key, the very essence needed to reignite its glow, which in turn will stabilize the root systems here in the pass. You are so focused on your microscopic worlds, you miss the greater tapestry. This was the core misunderstanding, the chasm between your perspectives. Rowan saw a singular solution, a grand, sweeping act to restore an imagined global harmony. You saw interconnected systems, delicate balances, where a single, forceful intervention could unravel generations of natural evolution. Your goal, to build a stronger bond with the ancient plant guardians, to understand their intricate needs, clashed violently with Rowan's desperate, almost messianic quest to restore the Lumina Pearl's glow. You believed in nurturing the source. Rowan believed in treating the symptom, or perhaps the perceived core. You misunderstand the guardians, Rowan, you retorted, your voice low but firm. They don't need a quick fix. They need their natural cycles respected. Draining the nectar will only make things worse. And your quiet observations, your patient waiting, will allow the world to crumble around us. Rowan's eyes flashed with conviction. The pearl dims with each passing hour. I will not stand by. With that, they turned, melting back into the swirling mist, leaving behind a chilling resolve that promised further, more drastic action. Orion squeezed your arm gently. Rowan is passionate, but perhaps misguided. Passionate enough to destroy what they claim to protect, you muttered, the tea turning cold in your hand. The unseasonal mist thickened, an oppressive blanket that seemed to absorb all sound, all light. It felt like the world was holding its breath. The Skyweaver's Lookout, the highest point in the pass, a vantage from which to observe the patterns of the wind and the migration of cloud blossoms, was now entirely swallowed, a silent testament to the encroaching disarray. The next few days blurred into a cycle of frustrated observation and solitary work. The Root-Tangle Maze tightened its grip, making passage almost impossible. Supplies, including essential medical provisions and specialized spore cultivation tools, were now desperately scarce in the isolated communities further up the pass. You attempted to chart the shifting root patterns, meticulously drawing intricate maps on treated sunpetal bark, trying to predict their movements, to find a stable bypass. But the root tangle was more insidious than simple growth. It pulsed with an unnatural energy, an almost malicious intelligence. You discovered minute, almost invisible tendrils of a foreign, iridescent fungus intertwined with the sunpetal roots, an aggressive parasitic growth that seemed to be causing the erratic shifts. This wasn't natural. It had the hallmarks of something manipulated, something forced. And you had a sickening feeling you knew who was behind it. Rowan's methods, their frantic attempts to restore harmony, often veered into the realm of radical experimentation, a dangerous disregard for established ecological boundaries. One particularly dense section of the maze, a bottleneck where several vital supply routes converged, proved impossible to navigate. The roots here were a colossal, impenetrable wall, seemingly impenetrable. You knew from your studies that beneath these ancient sunpetal formations lay dormant access conduits, remnants of an older, grander root system. If you could reactivate one, you could bypass the choke point. It was a complex repair, requiring a precise manipulation of energy flows and the careful introduction of specific spores to stimulate the dormant pathways. This is it, you whispered to yourself, alone in the deepening twilight, the air heavy with the sweet, cloying scent of the parasitic fungus. Orion had offered to help, to bring his knowledge of ancient architectural lore to bear, but you had politely, firmly declined. I've handled more delicate root systems than this. I know what I'm doing. You needed no distractions, no well-meaning questions, no gentle criticisms of your methods. This was your domain, your problem. You alone would solve it. You set about your task, a self-imposed isolation. Hours bled into one another. You carefully uncovered an ancient access panel, a circular depression in the earth, overgrown with moss. Inside, a labyrinth of crystalline conduits lay exposed, their surfaces dull and cracked. Your spore sleuth instincts screamed at you this was beyond mere repair. It required a complete recalibration, a delicate dance of bioelectrical currents and potent growth stimulants. You began by carefully brushing away debris, using a series of fine-tipped tools, the very ones you had crafted yourself. You mixed a special serum, a blend of activated spores and concentrated sunpetal sap, designed to awaken dormant root cells. The air grew thick with the refreshing spray of the glimmering geysers nearby, the constant hiss and sigh of the superheated water providing a rhythmic, almost hypnotic backdrop to your intricate work. The cool moisture kissed your skin, offering temporary relief from the mental strain, but it did little to quell the rising tide of frustration. The conduit system was far more degraded than you had anticipated. What you thought would be a simple activation became a full-blown reconstruction. You attempted to realign a fractured crystal conduit, your hands shaking with the effort. The internal pressure was immense, a silent demand for perfection. You knew intellectually that you should have asked Orion. His intuitive understanding of ancient structures, his ability to read the story of a mechanism, would have been invaluable. But the words had died in your throat. Asking for help is weakness, a mantra etched into your very being. A crack echoed in the confined space, sharper than the geyser's spray. A hairline fracture spiderwebbed across the conduit, a critical failure. You froze, heart pounding. You had overloaded it. The delicate balance was broken, irretrievably so by your alone attempts. A wave of nausea washed over you. The serum, potent and volatile, began to fizz and smoke, reacting with the damaged crystal, threatening to spread its corrosive energy through the entire network. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through your carefully constructed facade of competence. You scrambled, trying to contain the reaction, to seal the conduit, but your hands felt clumsy, useless. The smoke stung your eyes, blurring your vision. You were overwhelmed, stuck. The very ground beneath you seemed to hum with impending failure. The Root-Tangle Maze had won, and you, the solitary spore sleuth, had been defeated by your own stubborn pride. The consequences were immediate. The conduits, instead of activating, began to collapse, sending tremors through the earth. The supply route was now permanently severed, at least by your current methods. You had not only failed to open a path, you had actively destroyed one. A cold dread seeped into your bones. The communities further up the pass, already suffering, would now be cut off indefinitely. The blame, undeniably, lay with you. You sat there amidst the wreckage, a bitter taste in your mouth, the spray of the geysers now feeling like tears on your face. You had gambled, and you had lost everything. The image of Orion's gentle, questioning eyes, his offer of assistance, haunted you. The weight of your failure pressed down, heavy and suffocating. You were a fraud, a lone wolf whose self-reliance had led only to disaster. It was Orion who found you hours later, when the moon cast long, skeletal shadows through the pass. He didn't say, "I told you so." He simply knelt beside you, surveying the destroyed conduit with a quiet understanding. "Sometimes the story is too big for one voice, little spore," he murmured, his fingers gently tracing the shattered crystal. "It needs a chorus." You could only nod, a choked sound escaping your throat. The shame was a physical ache. You wanted to vanish, to dissolve into the very spores you studied. But Orion's presence, his quiet empathy, was a balm. You hadn't asked for help, but he had come. And in that moment, something shifted within you, a tiny, almost imperceptible crack in the armor of your self-imposed isolation. The incident with the conduit was a major setback, and the communities began to suffer real hardship. The news reached you of increasing illness, a strange lassitude affecting even the most resilient, and the first whispers of a blight, a creeping decay attacking the sunpetal plants themselves. The cloud blossom nectar, the powerful immune system booster, was now critical, not just for the ecosystem, but for the very people living within it. And its supply, thanks to the root-tangle and your own disastrous attempt, was virtually non-existent. Rowan's sunstone, however, seemed to thrive on the desperation. They intensified their efforts, openly extracting what little nectar they could find, justifying it by claiming it was necessary to save the Lumina pearl. "The world is dying, spore sleuth," they had declared, their voice echoing through the pass during a tense encounter. "The pearl's light is fading, and with it, the lifeblood of this land. Your slow, cautious methods are a luxury we can no longer afford." The fate of the world. It was no longer a distant threat, but a creeping, tangible reality. The unseasonal mist from the Skyweaver's lookout had descended into the lower reaches of the pass, carrying with it a sickly pallor, a visible representation of the world's failing health. The air now tasted of decay and desperation, a stark contrast to the former fragrant breath of the pass. The glimmering geysers seemed to weep, their refreshing spray no longer invigorating, but chilling, carrying with it the subtle, metallic tang of the parasitic fungus that was now everywhere. You and Orion, united by the shared crisis and by your newfound, fragile willingness to collaborate, worked tirelessly. Orion delved into ancient lore, seeking forgotten pathways and alternative energy sources, while you frantically sampled the blight, analyzing its spores under your self-constructed microscope. You discovered the parasitic fungus was indeed related to the unseasonal mist, and that Rowan's radical techniques, in an attempt to stimulate a connection between the sunpetal and the pearl, had inadvertently created a hyper-aggressive mutation. Rowan, in their desperate pursuit of a singular solution, had unleashed a plague, their goal to restore the Lumina Pearl's glow, born of a genuine desire for harmony, had twisted into a destructive force, threatening the very foundations of life in the pass and beyond. The only known antidote, the only thing that could boost the Sunpetal's immune system enough to fight off the blight, was the cloud blossom nectar. But Rowan had hoarded what little was left, convinced it was solely for the Lumina Pearl. "The pearl is dying, Orion," you whispered one night, hunched over your glowing microscope, the tiny, mutated spores writhing in the light. But so is everything else. Rowan's solution is killing us all. "We need to get the nectar," Orion said, his voice grim. "Or at least a sample. We need to prove its true purpose, its true target." He pointed to an ancient map he had painstakingly recreated from fragmented scrolls, depicting a hidden sanctuary, a high-altitude grove known as the Cloud Blossom Perch, rumored to hold the largest untouched reservoir of nectar. The lore speaks of a natural wellspring, but it's heavily guarded, protected by an ancient defense mechanism that only responds to a specific vibrational frequency. "Rowan will be there," you stated, your heart hardening. "They'll already have learned of it or found it. This is it, the confrontation." The journey to the Cloud Blossom Perch was arduous. The Root-Tangle Maze was a suffocating embrace, now actively hostile, tendrils lashing out, attempting to ensnare you. The mist, thick and cloying, made every step a perilous gamble. You led the way, your knowledge of the pass's subtle shifts and hidden passages guiding you, while Orion, ever the lore weaver, recounted tales of the perch, of its sacredness, of the devastating consequences of its desecration. His stories, once a gentle academic pursuit, now felt like dire warnings, prophecies on the verge of fulfillment. As you ascended the treacherous, winding path, the glimmering geysers, which usually dotted the landscape with their soothing spray, now erupted erratically, their steam tainted with the metallic tang of the blight, their refreshing touch replaced by an unnerving heat. It was as if the very veins of the earth were protesting, overheating with a fever. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, you emerged into a small clearing, shrouded in the ever-present, sickly mist. Before you stood a massive, ancient sunpetal tree, its canopy stretching towards the sky, its bark glowing faintly, pulsating with a fragile light. And at its base, carved into the living wood, was a crystalline wellspring, shimmering with an ethereal, golden liquid, the cloud blossom nectar. But you weren't alone. Rowan Sunstone stood before the wellspring, their back to you, a complex device humming in their hands. It was a nectar extractor, a crude, aggressive piece of machinery designed to rapidly drain the precious fluid. Surrounding them were several of their followers, a mix of zealous acolytes and desperate individuals, all looking gaunt and pale under the pervasive mist. "Rowan," your voice cut through the silence, sharp with accusation. Rowan spun around, their face a mask of fierce determination. "Spore sleuth, Orion, you're too late. The nectar belongs to the Lumina Pearl. Its need is paramount." "You're destroying it, Rowan," Orion cried, stepping forward, his voice resonating with ancient sorrow. This is not harmony, this is destruction. The pearl's light is not worth the death of the world above it. The pearl is the world above it, Rowan countered, their eyes burning with a messianic zeal. Its fading glow is the cause of this blight, these roots, this mist. I am restoring the heart of it all. You're wrong, you yelled, moving closer, your hands clenching into fists. The blight is a mutated fungus, a direct consequence of your own manipulations. You tried to force a connection, and you unleashed a plague. The nectar is for the sunpetal, its guardians, its very lifeblood. You're draining the cure, not for a higher purpose, but for a misguided fantasy. Rowan's face twisted in denial. Lies. You always seek to undermine the grand vision, to cling to your petty, localized truths. The ancient lore explicitly states the pearl's connection to the cloud blossoms. They pointed a finger at you. You, with your spores and your microscopic obsessions, you cannot see the forest for the trees. You have no right to interfere. And you, with your grand pronouncements, cannot see the living, breathing forest because you're too busy rewriting its story. You shot back, your cynicism flaring into righteous anger. This nectar is for the entire ecosystem's immune system, not a single, distant mollusk. You're condemning us all. The confrontation escalated quickly. Rowan activated the extractor, a loud, whirring sound filling the air as the golden liquid began to flow, alarmingly fast, into a series of massive, crystalline containers. The ancient sunpetal tree, as if in agony, began to pulse faster, its light flickering, dimming. You lunged forward, not towards Rowan, but towards the extractor itself. Stop it, Rowan. You'll kill the tree. Rowan's followers moved to intercept you, but Orion, with surprising agility for a lore weaver, stepped in front, using his knowledge of ancient defensive stances, not to fight, but to deflect and block, creating a momentary diversion. Protect the tree, spore sleuth, he urged. You reached the extractor, your fingers scrabbling at its complex mechanisms. It was locked, shielded by a pulsating energy field. Rowan, seeing your intent, raised a hand, and a barrier of crackling energy erupted between you and the wellspring. You cannot stop me, they bellowed, their voice echoing with desperation. I am saving us all. You fell back, frustrated, the energy barrier pulsing with a heat that singed your skin. You were good at understanding organic systems, not necessarily breaking energy shields. Your mind raced, searching for an alternative. How could you disable it? Suddenly, a realization dawned. The ancient defense mechanism Orion had mentioned, the one that responded to a specific vibrational frequency. Rowan had not bypassed it. They had overridden it, forcing the extractor to function. If you could re-establish the original frequency, perhaps it would shut down the parasitic extraction. But you didn't know the frequency. Orion, you shouted, ducking a wild swing from one of Rowan's acolytes. The vibration, the tree's song. Do you know it? Orion, parrying another blow with a staff he'd magically conjured from a fallen branch, glanced at the tree. His eyes closed for a moment, listening, truly listening, to the faint, ethereal hum that emanated from the ancient sunpetal. It's a resonance of growth, he murmured, his voice strained. A deep, harmonious hum. It resonates with the core of the Root-Tangle Maze, a specific sequence of tones related to the sun's cycles and the moon's pull. You knew you couldn't replicate a precise vibrational frequency with your hands, but you were a spore sleuth. You understood the language of life. You looked around frantically. Your eyes landed on the small pouch at your hip, the Aqua-Glow Berries. A sudden, horrifying thought. The berries. They were perfectly ripe, yes, but they were also a storage of concentrated life force, a miniature, vibrant ecosystem within themselves. And they resonated with a subtle, biological hum of their own. A hum you knew intimately, because you had carried them for so long. They were a small, seemingly insignificant object that had been your private solace, your secret indulgence. Could they be the key? The essence of pure, untainted growth, a concentrated dose of the very harmony Rowan sought to restore by artificial means. Orion, keep them busy, you yelled, already reaching for your pouch. You pulled out a single Aqua-Glow berry, its inner light pulsating gently in your palm. Rowan saw your action. What is that? A diversion, they scoffed, but a flicker of unease crossed their face. You ignored them. This was it. This was everything. You pressed the berry against the energy barrier, closing your eyes, focusing all your will, all your accumulated knowledge of spore life and plant communication into this tiny, radiant orb. You envisioned the berry's life force, its natural growth resonance, counteracting the artificial, destructive frequency of the extractor. You poured your desperate hope, your cynicism, your very being into that one act. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a low, resonant hum began, not from the extractor, but from the berry itself, a deeper, purer note than the extractor's metallic whine. It resonated with the ancient sunpetal, the tree's faint, pulsing light brightening, responding to the natural, harmonious vibration. The energy barrier sputtered, flickered, and then, with a sharp crackle, dissolved, leaving a lingering scent of ozone. You didn't hesitate. You pressed the berry against the humming extractor, forcing its concentrated life force into the machine. The hum of the extractor warped, became distorted, then began to slow, grinding to a halt with a shuddering groan. The flow of nectar ceased. The giant sunpetal tree, relieved of its burden, let out a deep, almost audible sigh, its light stabilizing, strengthening. Rowan stared, aghast, at the silent extractor. "What have you done?" they whispered, their voice devoid of its former certainty. "I gave it back its voice, Rowan," you said, holding up the now slightly dulled Aqua-Glow berry. The voice of natural harmony, not forced control. But the battle wasn't over. The blight was still spreading, the Root-Tangle Maze still snarled, and the world was still on the brink. You had stopped the immediate desecration of the cloud blossom nectar, but you hadn't solved the core problem. The blight needed a cure, and the Aqua-Glow berries, while having successfully disrupted the extractor, were a mystery to everyone else. A few days later, the blight reached its peak. The sunpetal plants, weakened by the nectar's scarcity and the parasitic fungus, were succumbing rapidly. The air was heavy with the scent of decay. The healers and botanists, desperate, had tried everything. The communities, now facing widespread illness and crop failure, looked to you, the spore sleuth, for answers. The blight is resistant to all known antidotes, a frantic healer reported, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. It mutates too quickly. We need something truly potent, a perfect counteragent, something that can boost the sunpetal's immunity from its very core. You knew what that something was. You held it in your pouch, your secret stash of Aqua-Glow Berries. You had a sickening feeling in your stomach. To save the world, you had to reveal your most private, most selfish secret. The berries, your solace, your personal treasure, were now the only hope. Your flaw, the inability to ask for help, had led you to hoard these berries, ensuring you would never be without a comfort, a reserve for yourself. Now, that very hoarding was the critical factor. Orion stood beside you, his hand resting gently on your shoulder. He knew your habits, your private moments. He knew of your meticulous foraging, your secret trails. He had seen the berry you used to stop Rowan. He just didn't know the extent of your stash. "What is it, little spore?" he asked, his voice soft, knowing. "You look like you carry the weight of the Skyweaver's lookout on your shoulders." You hesitated, the words catching in your throat. It felt like tearing a piece of your soul out and presenting it for public scrutiny. I have something." Your voice was barely a whisper. "Something that might work, but it's personal." Orion's eyes widened slightly, but he remained patient, allowing you the space to unburden yourself. "Sometimes, the most personal things hold the greatest power," he said. You took a deep breath, the decision made, irrevocable. You reached into your pouch, pulling out not one, but several of the shimmering Aqua-Glow Berries, their inner light casting a soft, blue glow in the dim tent. A collective gasp rippled through the small group of assembled healers and scholars, including Elder Lyra, who stared at the berries as if they were mythical artifacts. "Aqua-Glow Berries," you announced, your voice gaining strength, though a tremor still ran through it. "Perfectly ripe. My personal stash." The admission felt like a physical wrench, a confession of both self-indulgence and, now, profound responsibility. When the Aqua-Glow Berries failed to bloom this season due to the blight, causing a widespread shortage, I kept these for myself. A beat of stunned silence. Then, a low murmur of surprise, and perhaps a hint of judgment. But Orion's hand tightened on your shoulder, a silent message of support. "These berries," you continued, ignoring the rising heat in your cheeks, "contain a highly concentrated, resilient variant of the sunpetal's natural immune boosters. They thrive on the same unique energies that fuel the plant guardians. My studies suggest they are the perfect counter to the blight, capable of stimulating the sunpetal's internal defenses at a fundamental level." You had spent years studying their growth, their unique properties, cataloging their every nuance. They were your passion, your private comfort, and now they were the world's salvation. Elder Lyra stepped forward, his earlier skepticism replaced by awe. These are legendary. We thought them lost, or merely a myth." You had these all along," you nodded, meeting his gaze directly. "Yes, I did. And now they are needed." You explained your findings, your theories, the exact method for preparing the berries into an anti-blight serum. The humility of the confession, the revelation of your secret, cut deeper than any physical wound. But it also forged a new kind of bond, not just with the plant guardians, but with the people you had so stubbornly kept at arm's length. The berries were immediately put to use. You oversaw the careful extraction and preparation of the serum, working alongside the healers, teaching them the precise methods you had honed in solitary study. The first samples, administered to severely blighted sunpetal plants, showed immediate results. The sickly pallor receded, replaced by a vibrant green. The parasitic fungus withered and died, its metallic tang replaced by the sweet, familiar scent of healing sunpetal. The revelation of your secret stash and its crucial role recontextualized everything. Your preference for working alone, once a flaw, had, in a twisted way, become the very thing that saved them. Your self-reliance, though rooted in a cynicism about collective efforts, had led you to meticulously preserve the very thing needed. Your secret, once a symbol of your detachment, had become a conduit for connection, forcing you to finally open up, to truly ask for and accept help in the distribution and application of the cure. Rowan Sunstone, witnessing the miraculous recovery of the sunpetal, their extractor, now a rusting monument to their misguided ambition, approached you, their pride shattered, their face etched with a profound regret. "You were right," they said, their voice hoarse, devoid of its former arrogance. "My desire for harmony blinded me. I forced my will upon nature and nearly destroyed it." "We all make mistakes, Rowan," you said, a surprising softness in your voice. The cynicism hadn't vanished entirely, but it had softened, replaced by a weary understanding. The plant guardians don't demand perfection. They demand respect and patience. How did you know these berries would work?" Rowan asked, gesturing to the thriving sunpetal. "Years of listening," you replied, a small, genuine smile gracing your lips, "and learning the difference between a whisper and a scream." You glanced at Orion, who smiled back, a silent acknowledgement of the path you had walked, the bond you had forged. He had seen your secret, understood your flaw, and still believed in the truth you sought. The Root-Tangle Maze, no longer fueled by the blight's parasitic energy, began to recede, slowly unwinding its grip, revealing the ancient paths once more. The unseasonal mist from the Skyweaver's lookout dissipated, replaced by the clear, crisp air of a healing world. The glimmering geysers, their waters now pure, sprayed a truly refreshing mist, a celebration of life renewed. The lumina pearl's glow, though still dim, began to flicker with a faint, hopeful light. Not because of forced intervention, but because the ecosystem above it, the sunpetal and its guardians, were healing, slowly, organically. The true harmony, the one you had sought to build a bond with, was not a singular, dramatic event, but a continuous, delicate dance of give and take, of respect and understanding. Your goal, to build a stronger bond with the ancient plant guardians, had been affirmed, not by asking them for favors, but by truly understanding their language, by defending their needs, and ultimately by sacrificing a piece of yourself for their survival. You had learned that true strength wasn't in solitary achievement, but in the courage to reveal your vulnerabilities, to share your secrets, and to allow others to help carry the burden. The world, it turned out, was not saved by a grand, sweeping gesture, but by a small, shimmering berry and the quiet, humble act of its revelation. And in that, you found a new kind of harmony, a deeper, more resilient kind of hope. The path ahead, while still fragrant with the ghosts of the past, now also carried the sweet promise of a future shared.